The girl. No one would claim. When the Alpha King chose the cursed outcast everyone feared, he sealed both their fates. Stay until the end to see how love can kill or save. Drop a like and comment which city you're watching from. The claiming auction smelled like desperation and wet stone. Alira Voss stood at the end of the line, wrists bound with iron cuffs that had rubbed her skin raw 3 days ago. She'd stopped feeling the sting yesterday. Now there was just numbness, the kind that settled deep in your bones when you'd accepted what was coming. Around her, girls whispered prayers. Some cried. Others stood silent, eyes vacant, already gone somewhere else in their heads. Alira understood that impulse. When your body was about to be sold like livestock, sometimes the only mercy was checking out early. But Alira couldn't afford that luxury. She had to stay sharp, had to watch. Because unlike the others, she wasn't just unwanted, she was dangerous. And if anyone discovered what lay beneath her veil, she wouldn't make it to the auction block. They'd kill her right here in the holding pen and no one would ask questions. The kingdom of Drakmor didn't tolerate cursed blood. Next group, a guard barked, his voice echoing off the stone walls of the underground chamber. 5 girls shuffled forward, chains clinking. Alira watched them ascend the narrow stairs toward the surface, toward the platform where men with gold and greed would decide their futures. She'd seen 12 groups go before them, watched through the gaps in the stone as noblemen and merchants bid on girls like they were horses. Checked their teeth, examined their hands for calluses, asked crude questions about their breeding potential. The ones who sold got dragged off by their new owners. The ones who didn't. Alira had heard the screams from the rejection cells. She didn't let herself think about what happened there. "You think anyone will claim you?" The voice came from beside her. Alira turned slightly, just enough to see the speaker through the gauze of her veil. A girl, maybe 16, with matted brown hair and a split lip that looked a few days old. "Doesn't matter what I think," Alira said quietly. "I heard the king himself is here today." The girl's eyes were wide, almost feverish. "The Alpha King. They say he's choosing a bride." Several heads turned at that. Even in their misery, the word king carried weight. "He won't choose from here," another girl muttered. She was older, maybe 30, with scars on her arms that spoke of a harder life. "Kings don't marry slaves and rejects. He's probably just watching for entertainment. Or choosing a concubine," someone else added bitterly. Alira said nothing. She'd learned years ago that hope was more dangerous than any weapon. Hope made you careless, made you believe in possibilities that didn't exist for girls like her, girls born wrong. The guard returned, face flushed from the cold autumn air above. Final group. Move. Alira's heart kicked against her ribs, but she kept her breathing steady as she joined the last shuffle of girls heading toward the stairs. The iron cuffs were connected by a chain that ran between all of them, so they moved as one stumbling unit, like a broken machine. Up the stairs, through a wooden door, and then light. Cold, gray daylight that felt like a slap after 3 days in the dark. Alira squinted, eyes adjusting, as the guards herded them onto a raised platform in the center of a large courtyard. Around them, hundreds of people had gathered. Merchants, soldiers, noblemen in fine cloaks with family crests stitched in gold thread. And beyond them, on a raised dais carved from black stone, sat a figure that made Alira's breath catch. The Alpha King. She'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. Kalen Drax, the king who'd taken the throne at 19 after his father's assassination. The ruler who'd crushed 3 separate rebellions in 5 years and united the fractured territories through sheer brutality. They said he was heartless, that he felt nothing, wanted nothing, cared for nothing except power. They said he was cursed. From this distance, Alira could make out only the broad strokes of him. Tall, dark hair, a face that might have been handsome if it wasn't carved from stone. He sat perfectly still, one hand resting on the arm of his throne, watching the auction with the same expression someone might use to observe paint drying. "Behold!" The auctioneer's voice boomed across the courtyard. He was a fat man in purple robes, his face shiny with sweat despite the cold. "The final offerings of this season's claiming auction. 8 fine specimens ready for work, breeding, or pleasure." Alira felt bile rise in her throat. Specimens. Like they were animals. We'll start with this one. The auctioneer grabbed the first girl in line, a tiny blonde who immediately started crying. 16 years old, healthy, good teeth. 50 silver, someone called out. 50 silver. Do I hear 60? The bidding went quickly. The blonde sold for 90 silver to a merchant who looked her over like he was buying a chicken. Then the next girl. Then the next. Alira watched the king the entire time. He didn't move, didn't react, just sat there like a statue, his eyes tracking each transaction with cold efficiency. When they reached the girl with the matted hair, the one who'd asked Alira about hope, something changed. The bidding started strong, but then the girl had what looked like a seizure. She collapsed, convulsing, foam at her lips. The crowd recoiled. "Witch touched!" someone screamed. "Cursed blood!" The guards rushed forward, but it was too late. The girl was already dead, her body going still with her eyes staring at nothing. The auctioneer made a disgusted sound and gestured for the corpse to be removed. "Apologies, my lords. Let's continue. Next we have—" But the crowd's mood had shifted. Cursed blood. Even the hint of it was enough to make people nervous. The next two girls barely got any bids, and the ones they did get were insultingly low. Then they reached Alira. The auctioneer grabbed her arm, yanking her forward. She stumbled, caught herself, and then stood as still as she could while he circled her like a predator. "Now this one is interesting," he said, his voice taking on a theatrical quality. "Note the veil. Some might say it hides something shameful, but I say it adds mystery. What secrets lie beneath? Perhaps she's scarred. Perhaps she's marked by disease, or perhaps—" He leaned in close, his breath hot and rancid. "Perhaps she's the most beautiful creature you've ever seen, and she's simply been hiding from unworthy eyes." A few chuckles from the crowd, but Alira could feel the tension. After what had just happened, no one wanted to take chances. "We'll start the bidding at 10 silver?" Silence. "Come now, gentlemen. 10 silver for a mystery is a bargain." More silence. Alira's chest tightened. This was it. This was how it ended. No bids meant the rejection cells, meant whatever horror waited for the ones no one wanted. 5 silver, the auctioneer said, desperation creeping into his voice. "Surely someone— Remove her veil!" The voice cut across the courtyard like a blade. Everyone froze. Alira's eyes snapped to the dais. The Alpha King was leaning forward now, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Your Majesty?" The auctioneer sounded confused. "I said remove her veil." Kalen Drax's voice was flat, emotionless. "I want to see what's underneath." No, 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 no. Alira's mind raced. If they removed the veil, if they saw her eyes, if they saw the marks, she'd be dead before sunset. They'd burn her like they'd burned her mother, like they'd burned everyone in her village. "Of course, Your Majesty." The auctioneer reached for the veil. Alira jerked back, but the guards grabbed her arms. One of them reached up and tore the gauze away. The crowd gasped. Alira stood there, exposed, her face bare for the first time in 8 years. She didn't look at the crowd, didn't look at the auctioneer. She looked straight at the Alpha King, meeting his gaze with everything she had left. Let him see. Let them all see. Her eyes were violet, not blue, not purple. True violet, the color of poison nightshade. And around her left eye, spreading down her cheek like a stain, were marks, thin black lines that looked like cracks in porcelain or veins of darkness spreading beneath her skin, the mark of a voidborn, the mark of a curse. "Cursed!" someone shrieked. "She's voidborn! Kill her!" The crowd erupted. People scrambled back, shouting, some reaching for weapons. The guards holding Alira tightened their grip, and one drew a knife, pressing it to her throat. "Wait!" The Alpha King was standing now. The crowd fell silent instantly, the kind of silence that came from absolute authority and absolute fear. Kalen Drax descended from the dais, moving with a predator's grace. He crossed the courtyard, the crowd parting before him like water. When he reached the platform, he didn't stop. He climbed the steps and walked straight to Alira. Up close, he was terrifying. Not because of his size, though he was tall and broad-shouldered. Not because of the sword at his hip or the crown of black iron on his head, but because of his eyes. They were gray, the color of winter storms, and completely empty, like looking into a void. He studied her face for a long moment. The marks. The violet eyes. the way her jaw was clenched so tight it ached. Then he spoke, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I know what you are. Elira's breath stopped. And I know what you did. His eyes searched hers, looking for something. 8 years ago, in the village of Thornhaven, you saved a boy from burning alive. Her mind spun back. 8 years ago. The fire. The screaming. She'd been 12, just coming into her power, and she'd used it without thinking, pulled the darkness from the flames, consumed it, saved the boy trapped inside the burning house. And then her mother had grabbed her and run, because using that power was a death sentence. That boy was me, the king said. Elira stared at him. The boy. The one she'd saved. He'd been maybe 14 at the time, visiting Thornhaven with some kind of royal convoy. She remembered his eyes, wide with terror as the flames closed in. Remembered the way he'd looked at her afterward, before her mother dragged her away. You made a promise, Kaelin said. Do you remember? She did. Through the smoke and chaos as they ran, he'd shouted something. A promise that he'd repay the debt, that he'd find her. She'd thought he was just a traumatized kid saying whatever came to mind. The Alpha King turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying across the courtyard with absolute authority. I claim this one. The auctioneer nearly fainted. Your Majesty, she's void-born. She's cursed. I know what she is. Kaelin's tone could have frozen fire. And I claim her as my bride, my queen. The courtyard exploded into chaos. Noblemen shouted protests. Advisors rushed forward trying to speak to the king. Someone screamed that he was mad, that he doomed the kingdom. Kaelin ignored all of it. He reached down and snapped the chain connecting Elira to the other girls with his bare hands, the metal giving way like paper. Then he grabbed her wrist, not roughly, but firmly, and pulled her off the platform. We're leaving, he said. Elira's legs moved automatically, her mind still trying to catch up with what was happening. The crowd pressed in, people shouting questions, hurling accusations. Guards formed up around them, pushing people back. Your Majesty, please! An older man in expensive robes forced his way through. You cannot marry Voidborn. The council will never allow... The council serves at my pleasure, Kaelin said without breaking stride. And I do not require permission. But the curse! Your own curse! Combining 2 cursed bloodlines will... Enough. The king's voice dropped to something dangerous. Question me again, Chancellor, and you'll find yourself in the cell she just vacated. The man went pale and fell back. They reached a carriage at the edge of the courtyard, black and unmarked except for the royal crest on the door. Kaelin opened it himself and gestured for Elira to get in. She hesitated, her mind finally catching up to her body. Why are you doing this? Because I owe you a debt, he said simply, and because I need you. Need me for what? His gray eyes met hers, and for just a moment, she saw something beneath the emptiness, something that might have been desperation. To break a curse, he said, before it kills me. Then he guided her into the carriage, climbed in after her, and the door slammed shut. The driver cracked the reins and they lurched forward, leaving the chaos behind. Elira sat across from the man who'd just claimed her. No, married her, and tried to process what had happened. 20 minutes ago, she'd been certain she was heading for the rejection cells, or a pyre. Now she was in a royal carriage with the Alpha King, apparently his wife, heading toward... Where are we going? She asked. Draxmore Palace, Kaelin said. He was looking out the window, his face expressionless again. Your new home. I didn't agree to this. You didn't object either. Because you didn't give me a chance. You just... She stopped, took a breath. Getting angry wouldn't help. You said you owe me a debt. Fine. But marriage? Making me queen? That's insane. Yes, he agreed. It is. The casual acknowledgement caught her off guard. She studied him, trying to see past the cold exterior. Your advisors are right, you know. Combining 2 cursed bloodlines is dangerous. Voidborn power is unstable at best, destructive at worst, and whatever curse you have is killing me, he finished. I know. I've known for 5 years since it first appeared. It's getting worse. Faster now. He finally looked at her. I have maybe a year. Less if I'm unlucky. And you think I can help you? I think you're the only one who can. Why? He was quiet for a moment, seeming to weigh how much to tell her. Because your power consumes darkness, and my curse is made of it. I've consulted every healer, every mage, every scholar in the kingdom. They all say the same thing. Only someone who can absorb and neutralize dark magic has a chance of breaking it. And Voidborn are the only ones with that ability. Then why not just hire me? Why marriage? Because the curse is tied to my heart, he said flatly, to my emotions, or rather, the lack of them. It feeds on emptiness, on isolation. The more alone I am, the faster it spreads. Marriage was the recommendation of the last mage I consulted before she died, trying to slow it. A bond. Connection. Someone close enough to reach the curse at its source. Elira let out a bitter laugh. So I'm medicine, a treatment. You're a solution, he corrected. And I'm offering you something in return, protection, status, power. As queen, you'll be untouchable. No one can hurt you or call you cursed when you wear my crown. Except I am cursed. So am I. He leaned forward slightly. We're both monsters, Elira Voss. The difference is, I'm offering you a chance to be a monster with power instead of a monster in chains. You can accept and live as a queen, or I can return you to the auction and let nature take its course. Your choice. It wasn't really a choice. They both knew that. But Elira had spent 8 years running, hiding, surviving on scraps and fear. And the boy she'd saved, now a king, was offering her something she'd never imagined having. A chance. Even if it came wrapped in ice and death. What are the terms? She asked. Simple. You'll live in the palace as my wife. You'll attend functions, play the role of queen. In private, you'll use your power to slow the curse, try to break it if possible. In exchange, you get safety, wealth, and status. And what about the marriage itself? His expression didn't change. No love, no intimacy, no expectations beyond what's necessary for appearances. I can't offer you those things. The curse makes it impossible. You can't feel anything? Not anymore. The curse burned it out of me. I can think, plan, reason. But emotions? He shook his head. They're gone, which makes me a poor husband, but an honest one. I won't lie to you or pretend this is something it's not. Elira looked at him, really looked. Beneath the cold exterior, the emotionless mask, she could see it now. The exhaustion, the way he held himself like every movement was calculated, controlled. He wasn't just cursed, he was dying, and he knew it. How long? She asked quietly. If I do nothing, how long do you have? 6 months, maybe less. And if I help? Unknown, but longer than 6 months. His gray eyes held hers. That's all I'm asking for. Time. A chance. I don't expect you to love me or even like me. Just try. She thought about the village she'd grown up in, thought about her mother's screams as they burned her, thought about 8 years of running, hiding, watching people's faces twist with fear and hatred when they saw her eyes, thought about standing on that auction block, about to be sold or killed, and then she thought about this strange, broken king who'd chosen her anyway, who'd seen exactly what she was and still claimed her, not out of love or desire, but out of desperate need. Maybe that was better. At least it was honest. I'll do it, she said. On one condition. Name it. If I can't break the curse, if you're going to die anyway, you let me go before the end. Give me enough gold to start over somewhere far away. Don't chain me to a sinking ship. He considered this, then nodded. Agreed. You have my word. The word of a cursed king. The only word I have. She almost smiled. Almost. Then I guess we have a deal. Kalen extended his hand across the carriage. Elira stared at it for a moment, then reached out and clasped it. His skin was cold. Not cool, cold. Like touching ice. Like touching death. Welcome to Draxmoor Palace, he said. Your Majesty. The title sounded wrong in his flat voice. Wrong and strange and terrifying. But Elira held his gaze and didn't let her hand shake. She'd survived 8 years of running. She'd survived the auction and the rejection cells and the moment when the crowd saw her face and screamed for her blood. She could survive this. She had to. Because if she failed, they'd both be dead before winter ended. and something told her that dying as a queen was only marginally better than dying as a cursed outcast in a holding cell, but at least she'd die trying. The carriage rolled on through the gray afternoon, carrying them toward the palace, toward whatever waited in the cold halls and colder throne room, toward a marriage built on desperation and necessity, toward a future neither of them believed in, but both were willing to fight for. Because sometimes survival wasn't about hope. Sometimes it was just about making it to tomorrow. And tomorrow started now. The palace rose from the hillside like a wound in the landscape, all black stone and sharp angles, towers that clawed at the gray sky. Alira had expected something grand, maybe even beautiful. What she got was a fortress that looked like it was built to keep things out, or maybe to keep things in. The carriage rattled through iron gates that groaned shut behind them with a sound like a death rattle. Guards lined the courtyard walls, their faces hidden behind helmets, their hands resting on sword hilts. Watching, always watching. "They're afraid of me," Alira said quietly. Kaelin glanced at her, then at the guards. "They're afraid of everything. Fear keeps them sharp. Must be exhausting, living like that. You tell me. You've been doing it for 8 years. She didn't have an answer for that. The carriage stopped at the base of wide stone steps leading to the palace entrance. A servant rushed forward to open the door, his hands shaking slightly as he bowed. When Alira stepped out and he caught sight of her eyes, he went pale and stumbled backward. "Steady," Kaelin said, his voice flat but commanding. "This is your queen. You'll treat her as such." The servant's mouth worked silently for a moment before he managed a strangled, "Yes, Your Majesty." Alira followed Kaelin up the steps, acutely aware of every eye on her. More servants had gathered near the entrance, maids, guards, what looked like minor nobles. All of them stared. Some whispered behind their hands. One woman made a warding gesture, like Alira was a disease that might spread through eye contact. "Welcome home," she thought bitterly. Inside the palace was exactly what she'd expected, cold, dark, and oppressive. The main hall stretched out before them, all stone and shadows, with tapestries on the walls that depicted battles and conquests. No flowers, no color, just varying shades of gray and black. An older woman approached, her spine rigid, her face carved from disapproval. She wore dark robes with silver embroidery, and her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing to Kaelin while pointedly ignoring Alira. "We were not informed you would be bringing a guest." "Lady Morgath," Kaelin said, "this is Alira Voss, my wife, your queen." The woman's composure cracked for just a second. "Your wife? Is there a problem with your hearing?" "No, Your Majesty, but—" Lady Morgath's eyes finally landed on Alira, and her expression shifted from shock to horror. "She's voidborn, observant as ever, but the law—" "The law says what I say it says." Kaelin's tone could have cut glass. "Alira will be given the Queen's chambers. She'll be treated with the respect her position demands. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to leave my service. Permanently." Lady Morgath looked like she'd swallowed something rotten, but she managed a stiff bow. "Of course, Your Majesty. I'll prepare the chambers immediately." "Do that, and send for the royal seamstress. My wife needs appropriate clothing." The woman hurried away, her footsteps echoing off the stone. As soon as she was gone, Alira turned to Kaelin. "That was subtle." "Subtlety is for people with time. I don't have time." He started walking down a corridor to the left, and Alira followed. "Lady Morgath runs the household. She's efficient, ruthless, and loyal to a fault. She'll hate you on principle, but she won't undermine you. Not openly." "What about the others?" "Most will follow her lead. Some will be worse. A few might surprise you." He paused at a staircase, then started climbing. "The important thing is not to show weakness. They'll test you, push boundaries, try to make you crack. Don't let them. And if they don't test me, if they just refuse to acknowledge me, then they'll answer to me." He said it simply, like stating a fact. "You're queen now. That comes with protection, whether they like it or not." They reached the second floor and turned down another corridor. This one had windows at least, tall and narrow, letting in weak afternoon light. Alira could see the grounds below, training yards, gardens that looked half dead, more walls and towers. The Queen's chambers are here, Kaelin said, stopping at a set of double doors carved with intricate patterns. He pushed them open, revealing a suite that was larger than any place Alira had ever lived. A sitting room with furniture that looked expensive and uncomfortable. A bedroom beyond, with a massive four-poster bed draped in dark fabric. Everything was clean, pristine, and completely soulless. Your maid will be assigned within the hour, Kaelin continued. Meals will be brought to you until you're comfortable dining in the hall. If you need anything— Where are your chambers? Alira interrupted. He gestured down the corridor. Other end of the hall, far enough for propriety, close enough for appearances. So we're really doing this, separate lives under one roof. That was the agreement. She walked into the sitting room, running her fingers along the back of a chair. When do we start? With the curse, I mean. Tonight, after you've settled in. He hesitated, which was the first time she'd seen him look uncertain about anything. It's not pleasant, the process. You should be prepared for that. I've survived worse. Maybe, but this is different. You'll be touching something that wants to kill me. It'll fight back. His gray eyes met hers. If at any point it becomes too much, you stop. Immediately. I'd rather die slowly than take you with me. The admission surprised her. She'd expected him to be calculating, to see her purely as a tool, but there was something in the way he said it, a sliver of humanity beneath the ice. I'll be careful, she said. He nodded, then turned to leave. Stopped at the door. There's a council meeting tomorrow morning. You should attend. Will they let me? They don't have a choice. You're queen. A pause. But they'll fight you every step. Be ready. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Alira stood alone in the queen's chambers, her chambers now, and tried to process the past few hours. This morning, she'd been in chains. Now she was in a palace, wearing the title of queen, married to a dying king who'd chosen her because she was the only one cursed enough to help him. It was insane. She was insane for accepting. But what choice did she have? She walked to the window and looked out at the grounds below. Guards patrolled in pairs, their movements precise and military. Beyond the walls, she could see the city of Draxmoor sprawling down the hillside, smoke rising from chimneys, streets winding between buildings like scars. Somewhere out there, people were living normal lives, worrying about normal things, not wondering if they'd survive the night or if the curse they were supposed to cure would kill them first. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called. A young woman entered, maybe 20, with brown hair in a braid and nervous hands. She curtsied awkwardly. "Your Majesty, I'm Kara. I've been assigned as your maid." Alira studied her. The girl looked terrified, her eyes darting everywhere except directly at Alira's face. "You drew the short straw?" Kara blinked. What?" "To be assigned to the Void-born Queen. I assume nobody volunteered." A flush crept up the girl's neck. "Lady Morgath chose me because I'm new. Only been here 3 months. And expendable if something goes wrong, I suppose." Kara finally met her eyes, and Alira saw something unexpected there. Not fear exactly, but curiosity. "But I don't think anything will go wrong. You saved the king's life once already. That's what the servants are saying." "The servants talk about me." "They talk about everything, Your Majesty. It's how we survive." Kara moved to the wardrobe and started organizing things that didn't need organizing. If it helps, most of us think it's romantic. The king choosing his childhood savior, like something from the old stories. Alira almost laughed. "It's not romantic, it's a transaction." "Maybe, but you're still here. You could have said no." "Not really." Kara glanced at her. "You're probably right, but still, you said yes. That takes courage." The girl's honesty was disarming. Alira had expected judgment, fear, maybe hostility, not this tentative kindness. "Thank you, Kara." "For what?" "For not running when you saw my eyes." "Oh." Kara smiled slightly. "Well, I figured if the king isn't afraid of you, I probably don't need to be either. He's afraid of nothing." If only that were true, Alira thought. The seamstress arrived an hour later, a sharp-eyed woman who measured Alira like she was a piece of furniture, barely speaking except to bark orders. Alira stood still and let her work, understanding that resistance would only make everything worse. By the time evening fell, she had 3 new dresses, all black or dark gray, all high-necked and modest. Queen's clothing, Kara explained. Appropriate for someone in mourning, even though no one had died recently. The palace is always in mourning, Kara added as she helped Alira into one of the dresses. Has been since the old king died. I think everyone's just gotten used to wearing dark colors. Cheerful. You get used to it. Kara finished with the buttons and stepped back. You look like a queen now. A proper one. Alira looked at herself in the mirror. The dress fit perfectly, emphasizing her height without being revealing. With her dark hair and violet eyes against the black fabric, she looked powerful, dangerous, like someone who might actually deserve the crown. It was terrifying. Another knock. Kara opened the door to reveal a guard. His Majesty requests the Queen's presence in his chambers. Alira's stomach tightened. Now? Yes, Your Majesty. She followed the guard down the corridor, past doors and tapestries and windows that showed nothing but darkness now. When they reached Kaelin's chambers, the guard knocked once, then opened the door and stepped aside. The king's rooms were larger than hers, but just as cold. The sitting room had a fireplace, at least, with actual flames burning. Beyond that, she could see a bedroom, a study, and what looked like a library. Kaelin stood by the fire, still wearing the same clothes from earlier. He'd removed his crown, though, and without it, he looked younger, almost human. Close the door, he said. Alira did. They were alone now, no servants or guards, just the two of them and the curse hanging between them like a third presence. Are you ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. He gestured to a chair near the fire. Sit. This works better if you're grounded. She sat. He pulled another chair closer than she'd expected, their knees almost touching. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the shadows under his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly before he curled them into fists. Show me the curse, she said. Kaelin unbuttoned his shirt with precise movements, pulling the fabric aside to reveal his chest. Alira's breath caught. Black lines spread across his skin like cracks in ice, radiating from the center of his chest outward. They pulsed faintly with a sickly dark light, and where they touched, his skin looked gray and lifeless. The pattern was beautiful in a horrible way, intricate, detailed, like something had been carved into him from the inside. It started 5 years ago, Kaelin said quietly. Just a small mark over my heart. By the end of the first year, it had spread to my ribs. Now it's reaching my shoulders. He touched one of the lines, and Alira saw him wince. In 6 months, maybe less, it'll reach my heart completely. When that happens, you die. Yes. Alira leaned forward, studying the curse without touching it yet. She could feel it from here, a cold, hungry presence that seemed to pull at everything around it, like it wanted to consume not just Kaelin, but the entire room, the entire world. What does it feel like? She asked. Empty, like something's been hollowed out of me. The first thing it took was warmth. I haven't felt warm in 5 years. Then it started on emotions. Joy went first, then anger, fear, love. Now there's just nothing. I can think, plan, reason, but I don't feel it, any of it. But you feel the pain. Pain it lets me keep. Maybe because pain is useful, reminds me I'm still dying. He met her eyes. Can you help? Alira took a breath, then reached out slowly. Her fingers hovered over the nearest black line, and immediately she felt the curse react, pushing back, trying to repel her touch. It recognized what she was. Recognized the threat. This is going to hurt, she said. I know. She pressed her palm flat against his chest. The curse screamed. Not audibly, Alira heard it in her mind, a shriek of rage and hunger that made her teeth ache. The black lines flared brighter, pulsing rapidly, and beneath her hand she felt Kaelin's skin grow colder. So cold it burned, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she did what she'd done only a handful of times in her life. She opened the part of herself that had marked her as cursed since birth, the void inside her that could consume darkness, pull it in and neutralize it like water snuffing out flame. The curse fought. It thrashed against her touch, tried to spread faster, tried to dig deeper into Kaelin's chest to escape her reach. She could feel it searching for his heart, could sense how desperately it wanted to finish what it had started. Alira pushed harder. She pulled the darkness into herself, felt it sliding across her skin like oil, felt it trying to find purchase in her own body. But void-born power was specifically designed for this, to consume, to nullify, to turn dark magic into nothing. The curse realized it was losing, and it didn't go quietly. Pain exploded through Elira's arm, sharp and vicious, like someone had shoved knives under her skin. She gasped, but held on, kept pulling, kept consuming. The black lines under her palm began to fade, not completely, but enough. Retreating from her touch, shrinking back toward Kaylin's heart. "Stop," Kaylin said through gritted teeth. "That's enough." She pulled her hand away, gasping. Her arm felt like it was on fire, and when she looked down, she saw why. Black lines, thin ones but visible, had appeared on her skin, spreading from her palm to her wrist. "What?" she started. "It tried to transfer," Kaylin said. His voice was rough, strained. "When it realized you were consuming it, it tried to jump hosts. I warned you it would fight back." Elira stared at the marks on her arm. They weren't spreading anymore, just sitting there like accusations. "Will they stay?" "I don't know, maybe. Or maybe your power will finish consuming them." He reached for his shirt, started buttoning it. "How do you feel?" "Like I touched something that wanted me dead." "Accurate." He looked at her, really looked, his gray eyes searching her face. "But it worked. I felt something. Just for a moment. Like a warmth where you touched. It's been years since I felt anything like that." "That's good, right?" "Maybe. Or maybe it means the curse is adapting." He stood, and Elira saw him sway slightly before catching himself. "We should stop for tonight. Let you recover." "I'm fine." "You're not. And neither am I." He moved to a cabinet, pulled out a bottle and 2 glasses, poured amber liquid into both, and handed one to Elira. "Drink. It helps." She took a sip and immediately coughed. Whatever it was burned like liquid fire. "What is this?" "Something the royal physicians think might slow the curse. Mostly it just makes me feel slightly less dead inside." He downed his glass in one swallow. "You did well tonight, better than I expected." "You expected me to fail?" "I expected you to run." His eyes met hers. "Most people would have. Touching that curse, it's not natural. It fights every instinct you have." "I've had a lot of practice ignoring my instincts." "I noticed." He set his glass down. "The council meeting is at dawn. Kara will wake you." "And Elira?" "Yes?" "Don't try to be diplomatic. They'll eat you alive if you show weakness. Just be yourself. Be the girl who survived 8 years on the run. That person is stronger than any noble in that room." She wanted to believe him, wanted to think that strength would be enough. But she'd seen the way people looked at her, heard the whispers, and tomorrow she'd be walking into a room full of people who saw her as a threat, a curse, an abomination that had somehow tricked their king into marriage. This was going to be a disaster. Elira returned to her chambers to find Kara waiting with tea, and something that might have been sympathy in her eyes. The maid saw the marks on Elira's arm and went pale. "It transferred," Elira said before Kara could ask. "It's fine, probably." "That doesn't look fine, Your Majesty. Better me than him." Elira sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. "Has anyone in this palace ever actually been happy?" Kara thought about it. "I heard the old king used to throw festivals, before he died. But that was years ago. How did he die?" "Assassination, during a peace summit with the Northern Territories. Someone poisoned his wine." Kara poured tea with shaking hands. "They say King Kaelin found the assassin himself, killed him with his bare hands. That was just before the curse appeared." Elira felt something cold settle in her stomach. "You think the curse came from the assassination?" "I don't know, but the timing—" Kara trailed off. "There are rumors about dark magic, about the king making a deal to get revenge." "What kind of deal?" "The kind that costs everything." Kara handed her the tea. "But they're just rumors, palace gossip, probably nothing. Except it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like a missing piece, like something that might explain why Kaelin was so certain only void-born power could break the curse." Elira drank her tea and tried not to think about deals made in darkness. about revenge that cost more than it was worth, about curses that might be payment for something worse. She had enough problems without adding conspiracy theories to the list. That night, she dreamed of fire and ice, of a boy screaming in flames and a girl pulling darkness from the air to save him, of black marks spreading like cracks across skin, across stone, across everything, until the whole world was fractured and breaking. She woke to Kara shaking her shoulder gently. "Your Majesty, it's time." Dawn light filtered through the windows, weak and gray. Alira, dressed in one of the new gowns, let Kara fix her hair into something that looked regal and tried to prepare herself for what was coming. The council chamber was on the third floor, behind heavy oak doors guarded by two soldiers who looked at Alira like she was a disease. They opened the doors anyway, because orders were orders. Inside, a long table dominated the room. 12 men and 3 women sat around it, all dressed in fine clothes, all wearing expressions that ranged from hostile to coldly neutral. At the head of the table sat Kaelin, looking exactly as emotionless as always. The conversations died when Alira entered. 15 pairs of eyes tracked her across the room to the empty chair at Kaelin's right hand, the queen's seat. She sat, lifted her chin, met their stares without flinching. An older man with a gray beard cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, we were not informed the Queen would be joining us." "The Queen joins all council meetings," Kaelin said flatly. "Is there a problem, Chancellor?" The same man who'd protested at the claiming auction, Chancellor something, Alira remembered. He looked even less pleased now. "No problem, Your Majesty. Simply unexpected. Life is full of surprises. Continue with the agenda." The Chancellor shuffled papers, clearly thrown off balance. "Very well. First matter. The Northern Territories are requesting additional grain shipments. Their harvest was poor this year, and they claim they cannot meet their tribute obligations without assistance." "Deny the request," said a sharp-faced woman across the table. "They made the same claim last year. This is becoming a pattern." "Agreed," another council member added. "If we show weakness now, every territory will start demanding concessions." "Or," Alira said quietly, "they'll starve, and starving people tend to rebel." The room went silent. Everyone stared at her. The sharp-faced woman's eyes narrowed. "With respect, Your Majesty, you're new to these matters. The Northern Territories have a history of exploiting royal generosity, and you have a history of letting them die when it's convenient." Alira kept her voice level. "I've been to the Northern Territories. The soil is rocky. The growing season is short. If their harvest failed, it's not because they're lazy or lying. It's because they're trying to grow food in a place that barely supports life." "You've been to the Northern Territories?" The Chancellor sounded skeptical. "I've been everywhere. It's what happens when you spend 8 years running." She looked at Kaelin. "Send half the grain they requested, not as a gift, as a loan. They repay it over 3 years with interest. That way they don't starve, and we're not setting a precedent for free handouts." Kaelin studied her for a moment. "Reasonable. Make it so." The Chancellor looked like he'd swallowed glass, but he nodded and made a note. They moved through the agenda: trade disputes, military concerns, infrastructure needs. Alira stayed quiet for most of it, learning how the council operated, who held real power, and who just liked hearing themselves talk. Then they reached the last item. "There's been talk," the sharp-faced woman said carefully, "among the nobles, about the Queen's nature. Some are concerned about the implications of having void-born blood in the royal line." "Then they should be concerned quietly," Kaelin said, "or not at all. With respect, Your Majesty, this isn't a small matter. There are laws which I can change. But should you? The prohibition on void-born in positions of power exists for good reason. Their magic is unstable, dangerous. Throughout history, Alira interrupted, void-born have been murdered because people like you convinced everyone they were monsters. But you know what I've learned? Most of the actual monsters aren't cursed. They just wear nice clothes and hide behind council tables." The woman's face went red. "How dare you?" "I dare because I'm queen, and because I've spent my entire life being told I'm dangerous by people who never bothered to learn what void-born actually are." Alira stood, placing her hands flat on the table. The black marks from last night were visible on her wrist, and she saw several council members flinch. "You want to know what's dangerous? letting people starve because you're too proud to help them, starting wars because you can't negotiate, building a kingdom on fear and calling it strength. That's dangerous. My power? She let a small thread of darkness curl around her fingers, not threatening, just visible. This consumes darkness. It doesn't create it. If you're afraid of me, maybe ask yourself why. The room was dead silent. Then Kalen spoke, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Meeting adjourned. You're all dismissed. The council members filed out quickly, most avoiding eye contact with Alira. The sharp-faced woman looked like she wanted to say something, but thought better of it. When the room was empty, except for the two of them, Kalen turned to her. His expression hadn't changed, but she thought she saw something flicker in his eyes. Approval, maybe? Or just surprise? That was either very brave or very stupid, he said. Probably both. You made enemies today. I made enemies the moment I married you. She sank back into her chair, suddenly exhausted. At least now they know I'm not going to be quiet about it. He almost smiled. Almost. No, I suppose you're not. They sat in silence for a moment, the morning light strengthening through the tall windows. Outside, Illyra could hear the palace coming to life. Guards changing shifts, servants going about their duties, the ordinary sounds of a place that had been here long before her and would be here long after. The marks on your arm, Kalen said. Are they spreading? She checked. The black lines were fainter than last night, already fading. No, my power's consuming them, slowly, but it's working. Good. He stood, moved to the window. Tonight we'll try again, if you're willing. I'm willing. Even knowing it could transfer more of the curse to you? Even then. She joined him at the window, looking out at the city below. You made me queen, gave me protection. The least I can do is try to keep you alive long enough to appreciate it. I don't appreciate anything anymore. The curse burned that out. Then I'll appreciate it for both of us. He looked at her then, really looked, like he was trying to understand something that didn't make sense. Why do you care? You barely know me. Because you chose me, she said simply. When everyone else saw a monster, you saw someone worth saving. Maybe I'm returning the favor. For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he turned back to the window, his profile sharp against the light. My father used to stand here, he said quietly. Every morning. He'd look at the city and tell me that a king's duty was to protect his people, even when they didn't deserve it, even when it cost everything. His jaw tightened. I thought I understood, but I didn't. Not until I watched him die in front of me, poisoned by someone he trusted, and felt absolutely nothing. The curse took it, Illyra said. Whatever you might have felt. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just broken in a way that can't be fixed. He stepped back from the window. Either way, I need you to try. Because if this curse spreads much further, I won't be the only one who dies. It'll spread to the kingdom itself. I've seen the signs, crops failing near the palace, animals refusing to enter the grounds, people getting sick for no reason. Whatever this is, it's growing. And if I die without breaking it, he trailed off. It consumes everything, Illyra finished. Yes? She understood then. This wasn't just about saving one man. It was about stopping something that could destroy an entire kingdom. The weight of that settled on her shoulders like iron. Then we'd better get to work, she said. He nodded, turned to leave, stopped at the door. Illyra? Yes? Thank you for standing up to them. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Someone has to remind them that queens aren't just decorations. This time he definitely smiled. Just a fraction, just a ghost of expression, but it was there. Then he was gone, and Illyra was alone in the council chamber, staring at the empty chairs and wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Whatever it was too late to back out now. The attack started 3 nights later. Illyra woke to the sound of breaking glass and Kara's scream. She bolted upright, her heart hammering, just as her door burst open and 2 figures in dark cloaks rushed in. No faces visible, just knives gleaming in the moonlight. She rolled off the bed as the first blade came down, burying itself in her pillow. Her power surged instinctively, darkness pooling in her palms, but the second attacker was faster. He grabbed her arm, twisted, slammed her against the wall hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. Cursed filth, he hissed. You don't belong here. Then his head snapped back violently as Kalen appeared from nowhere and drove his fist into the man's jaw. The attacker crumpled. The second one lunged at the king, but Kalen moved like water, fluid, precise, brutal. He caught the knife hand, broke the wrist with a sickening crack, and threw the man across the room into the wardrobe. Guards poured in seconds later, surrounding the groaning attackers. Kalen stood in the center of it all, breathing hard, his eyes sweeping the room until they landed on Elira. Are you hurt? His voice was flat, but his hands were shaking. No, I'm fine. She pushed off the wall, her shoulder throbbing where she'd hit it. Kara! The maid was huddled in the corner, unhurt but terrified. Elira went to her, helped her up. It's okay. They're gone. They came for you, Kara whispered. They said you were a curse, that you'd destroy the kingdom. Take her to the servants' quarters, Kalen ordered one of the guards. Post someone outside her door. No one gets in or out without my permission. As they led Kara away, Kalen turned to the captain of the guard. I want every inch of this palace searched. Every servant, every noble, every person who has access to these halls. Someone let them in. Find out who. Yes, your majesty. The guards hauled the attackers away, leaving Elira and Kalen alone in her destroyed chambers. Glass littered the floor. Her bed was torn apart. The wardrobe door hung off its hinges. This was a message, Elira said quietly. They wanted me to know I'm not safe here. They're right. You're not. Kalen moved to the window where the glass had shattered, examining the frame. They came in from outside, climbed the wall. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was planned. How many people want me dead? Honestly? Half the palace. Maybe more. He turned to face her. But wanting and doing are different things. Whoever organized this had resources, access. They knew which room was yours, knew the guard rotations, knew exactly when to strike. Someone on the council, probably. Or someone close to them. His jaw tightened. This is my fault. I should have anticipated this. You can't protect me from everything. I can try. He crossed to her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something close to anger in his eyes. Not rage, he was too controlled for that, but a cold fury that was somehow worse. You're sleeping in my chambers tonight. Tomorrow we'll assign permanent guards to your door. That'll make me look weak. That'll keep you alive. There's a difference. He held out his hand. Come on, bring whatever you need. She gathered a few things, a change of clothes, the book Kara had left on her nightstand. Her hand shook slightly as she did it, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She'd survived 8 years on the run, faced down mobs and hunters, and worse. But something about being attacked in her sleep, in a place that was supposed to be safe, rattled her in a way she hadn't expected. Kalen's chambers were identical to hers in layout, but felt completely different. Where hers had been trying to be welcoming and failing, his didn't even pretend. Everything was functional, stripped down, cold. Books lined one wall, maps covered another. A weapons rack held swords, daggers, and things Elira didn't recognize. You can take the bed, he said, gesturing to the bedroom. I don't sleep much anyway. Where will you be? Right here, working. He moved to a desk covered in papers. No one gets through that door without going through me first. Elira wanted to argue, to say she didn't need protecting, but the words stuck in her throat. Because the truth was, she did need it. The palace was full of people who wanted her gone, and she had no allies except a dying king who couldn't even feel enough to care about his own survival. Except that wasn't quite true anymore, was it? Because he'd come for her, fought for her. And his hands had been shaking. She went to the bedroom, closed the door most of the way, and sat on the edge of his bed. The sheets smelled like cold air and something faintly metallic. Her shoulder ached where she'd hit the wall. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Through the gap in the door, she could see Kalen at his desk, silhouetted against lamplight. He'd gone perfectly still again, all that controlled fury locked back down under ice. But she'd seen it break. For just a moment, she'd seen something real. Maybe there was more left in him than he thought. The next morning, the palace was in chaos. Word of the assassination attempt had spread like fire, and suddenly everyone had an opinion. The council demanded an emergency meeting. Nobles clustered in corners, whispering. Servants kept their heads down and moved quickly, trying not to draw attention. Elara sat beside Kaelin in the council chamber, her shoulders still sore, her mind still sharp with anger. She'd put on her coldest expression and darkest dress, and she met every stare with one of her own. The Chancellor stood, his face grave. Your Majesty, this attack was a tragedy, but it raises serious concerns about security, about trust, about who in this room hired the assassins, Elara cut in. The chamber went silent. The sharp-faced woman, Lady Theron, Elara had learned, leaned forward. That's a serious accusation, Your Majesty. Then it matches the serious crime. 2 men climbed the palace walls, knew exactly which room was mine, knew the guard rotations, and tried to kill me. That level of knowledge doesn't come from outside. Elara swept her gaze across the table. Someone here wanted me dead, still wants me dead. This is absurd, said a younger council member, Lord Garrett. We may not all approve of your background, but to suggest we'd resort to murder, why not? You've spent the last week making it clear you think I'm a curse, that my presence endangers the kingdom. Isn't murder just following that logic to its conclusion? Enough, Kaelin said quietly. The single word carried more authority than any shout. The guard captain is investigating. When we have proof, we'll act. Until then, security will be increased throughout the palace. Double guards on all royal chambers. No one enters the Queen's presence without being searched. No exceptions. Lady Theron's eyes narrowed. That seems excessive. Someone tried to kill my wife in her sleep. Excessive is the appropriate response. He stood. This meeting is over. All of you are dismissed. Except you, Chancellor. The others filed out slowly, shooting glances at Elara that ranged from hostile to frightened. When the room was clear, the Chancellor approached the table, his posture stiff. Your Majesty, I must protest. Treating the council like suspects will only create more division. Good. Division means people will be careful. Careful means fewer assassination attempts. Kaelin moved to the window, his back to them both. Tell me, Chancellor, how long have you served this kingdom? 30 years, Your Majesty, since your grandfather's reign. And in those 30 years, have you ever approved of anything I've done? The old man hesitated. I've always offered my honest counsel, even when it was difficult. That's not what I asked. No, Your Majesty, I haven't always approved. But you've stayed loyal. Of course. Kaelin turned and his gray eyes were sharp. Then prove it. Find out who hired those assassins. I don't care if it's a council member, a servant, or someone in my own guard. I want names, and I want them before someone else dies. The Chancellor bowed and left. Elara stood, her legs shaky from sitting still for so long, and joined Kaelin at the window. You think it was him? She asked quietly. I think he knows more than he's saying, whether he hired them or just knows who did. He rubbed his chest absently, and Elara saw him wince. The curse is spreading faster. I can feel it. Then we work on it tonight. Push harder. It could kill you. It will kill you if we don't try. She touched his arm, and he flinched slightly at the contact. Let me help. That's why I'm here. He looked at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face. You're here because I forced you into this. Don't pretend it's anything else. Maybe it started that way, but things change. She pulled her hand back. You saved my life last night. The least I can do is try to save yours. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or confusion. Then it was gone, locked back behind the ice. Tonight, he said, after dark, we'll try again. The day crawled by. Elara stayed in her chambers, Kaelin's chambers technically, while guards searched the palace and servants whispered, and the tension ratcheted higher with every hour. Kara brought meals and updates, her hands still shaking whenever she set down a tray. They found the rope, she said during lunch. The one the assassins used to climb the wall. It was high-quality silk, expensive, the kind only nobles use. So it was definitely someone from inside. Looks like it. Kara wrung her hands. Everyone's scared, Your Majesty. The servants, I mean. If the nobles are willing to kill you, what's stopping them from killing anyone who gets in the way? Nothing, Elara said honestly, which is why you need to be careful. Stay with the other servants. Don't go anywhere alone. What about you? I have guards and a very paranoid king. She tried to smile, but it came out wrong. I'll be fine. Kara didn't look convinced, but she nodded and left. Alira spent the afternoon reading through books Kaelin had left on his desk. Histories of the kingdom, accounts of previous curses, medical texts about dark magic. Most of it was dense and academic, but one passage caught her attention. Voidborn power operates on a principle of consumption and conversion. Where other magic manipulates or creates, Voidborn magic consumes darkness and transforms it into neutral energy. However, this process is not without risk. The Voidborn themselves can become corrupted if they consume more darkness than their bodies can process, leading to a state known as void corruption. Symptoms include portrait, spreading black marks, loss of emotional regulation, increasingly destructive urges, and eventual complete transformation into a being of pure consuming void. Alira stared at the words. Then she pulled up her sleeve and looked at her arm. The marks from the curse had faded, but they'd left faint scars, thin white lines where black had been. And there were new marks too, ones she hadn't noticed before, just hints of shadow under her skin, like bruises that wouldn't heal. She was consuming the curse, but the curse was leaving pieces behind. When Kaelin returned that evening, she showed him the passage. He read it silently, his face impassive. You think you're becoming corrupted, he said. I think it's possible. If I keep consuming the curse without giving my body time to process it. She closed the book, which means we need to be more careful. Slow down the sessions, space them out. That gives the curse more time to spread. And rushing gives me more chance of turning into whatever that book describes. We have to balance it. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat across from her, his hands folded on the desk. I won't ask you to risk that. If there's a chance you'll be corrupted, we stop. Now. I'll find another way. There is no other way. You said so yourself. Then I'll die. It's that simple. It's not simple at all. Alira leaned forward. You think I want to watch you die? You think I want to stand by while this curse consumes you and then spreads to the entire kingdom? Because that's what will happen. You said it yourself. The curse is already affecting the land, the people. If we don't stop it, everyone dies. Not just you. Better everyone than you becoming a monster. The words hit her like a physical blow. She stared at him, trying to understand where this was coming from. The man who couldn't feel, who told her he was empty inside, was willing to let himself and his kingdom die to protect her. Why? She asked quietly. Why do you care what happens to me? I don't know. He looked away. I shouldn't. The curse burned that out. But when I saw those men in your room, when I saw that knife coming down, he trailed off. Something broke through, just for a second. Fear, maybe, or anger. I felt it. I shouldn't be able to, but I did. Alira's breath caught. The sessions are working, not just slowing the curse. They're bringing your emotions back. Or the curse is adapting, playing tricks. I don't know what to trust anymore. She reached across the desk, covered his hand with hers. His skin was still cold, but not as much as before. Trust this. Trust that I'm choosing to help you, not because you forced me, but because I want to. And trust that I'm strong enough to handle whatever comes. He looked at their joined hands, then at her face. You're either very brave or very foolish. I'm both. It's part of my charm. He almost smiled. Almost. We'll do one more session tonight, but if those marks spread further, we stop. Agreed? Agreed. They waited until midnight, when the palace had gone quiet. Kaelin built up the fire until it blazed, warming the room against the autumn chill. Alira sat across from him, her heart steady despite everything, and watched as he unbuttoned his shirt. The curse had spread since last time. The black lines now reached his shoulders, creeping up toward his neck like grasping fingers. The skin around them looked gray and dead, and the curse pulsed with a rhythm that matched no heartbeat, too slow, too deliberate. It's getting worse fast, Alira said. I know. Which is why we need to try harder tonight. He met her eyes. But the moment it hurts too much, the moment you feel it transferring, you pull back. Promise me. I promise. She placed both hands on his chest this time, directly over the worst of the marks. The curse reacted immediately, shrieking in her mind, thrashing against her touch. But she was ready for it now. She opened herself wider, pulled harder, consumed faster. The darkness flooded into her like ice water. It burned and froze simultaneously, spreading up her arms, across her shoulders. She could feel it searching for her heart, trying to take root. But she pushed back with everything she had, using her void-born power to break it down, neutralize it, turn it into nothing. The curse fought viciously. It showed her visions, her mother burning, villages destroyed, children screaming, everything she'd ever feared coming true. It whispered that she was a monster, that she'd always been a monster, that consuming it would only make her worse. "Don't listen," Kalen said. His voice sounded distant, muffled. "It lies. That's what it does." Illyra gritted her teeth and pulled harder. The black lines under her palms began to fade, retreating toward his heart. She could feel them shrinking, feel the curse losing ground. Just a little more. Just a little. Pain exploded through her chest. Not physical pain, something worse, like something inside her was being torn apart and reassembled wrong. The room spun. Her vision blurred. She heard Kalen shouting, felt him grab her wrists, but she couldn't let go, couldn't stop. Because she was so close, she could feel it, just a little more, and someone hauled her backward. She hit the floor hard, gasping, her entire body shaking. The curse's presence faded from her mind, leaving behind only echoes of its screams. "Illyra! Illyra, look at me!" Kalen was kneeling beside her, his hands on her shoulders. His shirt was still unbuttoned, and she could see his chest. The curse had retreated significantly. The marks barely reached his ribs now. But his face was drawn, his eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "I'm okay," she managed. "Did it work?" "Work? You almost killed yourself." He helped her sit up, and that's when she saw her arms. Black marks covered them from fingertip to elbow. Not faint traces like before, solid dark lines that pulsed with the same sickly light as Kalen's curse. They writhed under her skin like living things, spreading even as she watched. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. Don't panic." But Kalen grabbed her hands, pressing them between his. "Use your power. Consume it. You can do this." But she couldn't focus. The marks kept spreading, reaching past her elbows toward her shoulders. She could feel the curse burrowing deeper, trying to find purchase. And underneath it all, she felt something else. Hunger. A deep, terrible hunger that wanted to consume not just the curse, but everything. The fire. The walls. Kalen. "It's corrupting me," she gasped, just like the book said. "I took too much, Then let it out." Kalen's voice cut through her panic. "You consume darkness, so consume this. All of it. Don't hold back. Don't try to control it. Just let it burn through you." "It'll destroy—" "I don't care. Do it." She closed her eyes and stopped fighting, stopped trying to control the darkness spreading through her. Instead, she opened herself completely, let her void-born power surge unchecked. The marks on her arms flared bright, then began to smoke. The curse screamed as her power consumed it, broke it down, turned it into raw energy that had nowhere to go. Illyra felt it building inside her. Too much, too fast, like she'd swallowed the sun, and it was burning her from the inside out. She opened her mouth and screamed, and darkness poured out. Not physical darkness, pure concentrated void, black as pitch and cold as death. It spread across the room in a wave, smothering the firelight, drowning everything in shadow. For a moment, Illyra couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't feel anything except the power pouring out of her in a torrent. Then it stopped. The darkness dissipated, pulled back into her skin, and she collapsed forward into Kalen's arms. He caught her, held her while she shook and gasped and tried to remember how to breathe. "Look," he said quietly. She forced her eyes open and looked at her arms. The marks were gone. Completely gone. Her skin was unmarked except for those faint white scars from before. "You did it," Kalen said. "You consumed the corruption before it could take hold." "I almost destroyed your room." "Rooms can be rebuilt." He helped her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. "Are you all right?" "I don't know. Ask me in an hour when my head stops spinning." She looked at his chest. The curse had retreated significantly, but it was still there, still pulsing. "We're making progress." "At too high a cost." "There's no other way." "There has to be." He guided her to a chair, then poured water from a pitcher and handed it to her. "You can't keep doing this. The risk is too high." "Higher than letting you die?" "Yes." He said it without hesitation. Because you're worth more than I am. She stared at him. You can't mean that. I can't feel enough to lie. He sat across from her, his expression as unreadable as ever. I'm a king who can't rule properly because I'm dead inside. You're someone who's survived impossible odds and still somehow cares about other people. The kingdom needs you more than it needs me. The kingdom needs both of us. And I'm not giving up. She set down the water. We just need to be smarter, shorter sessions, more time between them. Let my body process the darkness before taking on more. And if that's not enough, then we'll figure something else out, together. He looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly he reached out and touched her cheek. His fingers were cold, but the gesture was warm. Human. I don't understand you, he said quietly. You should hate me. I bought you like property, forced you into this, used you. You also saved me, protected me, gave me a choice when no one else would. She covered his hand with hers. Maybe that's enough. His eyes searched hers, and for just a second she saw through the ice to whatever was underneath. Someone lost. Someone desperate. Someone who'd given up on feeling anything until she'd walked into his life and forced him to try. Then footsteps pounded in the corridor outside. Both of them turned as someone hammered on the door. Your Majesty! A guard's voice, urgent and frightened. We found something. You need to see this. Kaelin pulled away and went to the door. Alira followed, her legs still shaky. The guard outside was pale, his eyes wide. What is it? Kaelin demanded. The assassins, Your Majesty. We made them talk. They gave up names. Who hired them? The guard swallowed hard. Everyone, Your Majesty. The whole council. Lady Theron organized it, but they all contributed gold. They wanted the queen dead. The words hung in the air like poison. Alira felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not surprise, she'd suspected. But confirmation was different, the entire council. Everyone who smiled and bowed and pretended to accept her. They'd all agreed she should die. Arrest them, Kaelin said. His voice was perfectly flat, empty of emotion. All of them. I want them in cells by dawn. Your Majesty, the entire council. Did you stutter? No, Your Majesty, I'll do it immediately. The guard hurried away. Kaelin stood in the doorway, perfectly still, his hands clenched into fists. They'll fight back, Alira said quietly. If you arrest the whole council, you'll have a rebellion on your hands. The nobles will claim you've gone mad. They'll use this as proof the curse has broken your mind. They tried to kill you. I know. But if you arrest them all at once, you lose control. The kingdom splits. Everything falls apart. She moved to stand beside him. We need to be smarter about this. I don't feel smart right now. I feel... He trailed off, and when he looked at her, his eyes weren't empty anymore. They were blazing with cold fury. I feel angry. I want to watch them suffer for what they tried to do to you. Is that the curse talking, or is that me? Does it matter? Yes. Because if I can feel anger, then maybe I can feel other things. And if I can feel other things, then maybe the curse isn't as absolute as I thought. He turned to face her fully. Or maybe it's getting worse. Maybe it's making me irrational. I don't know how to tell the difference anymore. Alira took his hand. You're not irrational. You're protective. There's a difference. Protective implies I care. I shouldn't be able to care. But you do. The sessions are working, Kaelin. You're coming back. Slowly, but you are. Before he could respond, more footsteps, running this time. Kara burst around the corner, her face streaked with tears. Your Majesty, she gasped. Your Majesty, they're coming, the nobles. They've got weapons. They're saying the king has been corrupted by void-born magic. They're saying... She choked on a sob. They're saying they're going to cleanse the palace. Alira's blood ran cold. How many? Dozens, maybe hundreds. Every noble family still in the city. They've got private guards, mercenaries. They're organizing in the courtyard right now. Kaelin's face went hard. Get to the servants' quarters. Lock the doors. Don't come out until I send word. But go. Now. Kara fled. Kaelin turned to Alira. We need to get you somewhere safe. No. If I run, it proves them right. It proves I'm a coward, a curse, something to be feared. She met his eyes. If there's going to be a fight, I'm standing beside you. They'll kill you. They'll try. Let them. She felt her power stirring under her skin, responding to her anger. I've spent 8 years running from people like this. I'm done running. Kalen stared at her. Then slowly, something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Something fierce and dangerous. All right, he said. We do this together, but we do it my way. Which is? We remind them exactly who they're dealing with, both of us. He strode back into his chambers, pulled open a weapons cabinet, and drew out a sword. Then he tossed her a dagger. Can you use it? I've had to learn. Good, stay close. Don't do anything stupid, and if things go wrong, they won't. If they do, he continued, you run. You use whatever power you have to get out of this palace and you don't look back. Understood? She didn't answer, just tucked the dagger into her belt and followed him into the corridor. They walked toward the main hall where they could hear shouting now. Angry voices, the clash of weapons being drawn, the sound of a mob working itself into a frenzy. Whatever happens, Kalen said quietly, you were worth it. Saving, marrying, all of it. Alira looked at him. Don't talk like you're going to die. I'm not, but I wanted you to know anyway. They reached the main hall. The doors stood open, and beyond them, the courtyard was packed with nobles and mercenaries. Torches blazed, weapons glinted. At the front stood Lady Theron, her face twisted with righteous fury. Kalen Drax, she shouted, you have been corrupted by void-born magic. We demand you surrender the cursed queen immediately. Kalen stepped through the doors, Alira beside him. The crowd went silent at the sight of them. Demand? Kalen's voice carried across the courtyard like a blade. You demand nothing from me. You've lost your mind. The curse has broken you. You married an abomination. I married a woman who saved my life, something none of you have ever done. He moved forward, and the crowd shifted nervously. You tried to have her killed. You hired assassins. You betrayed your king and your kingdom because you were afraid of something you didn't understand. She's voidborn. She'll destroy us all. No, Kalen said quietly. But I will. The temperature in the courtyard dropped. Frost formed on the ground, spreading outward from where Kalen stood. His curse flared to life, black lines glowing through his shirt, and for the first time Alira understood exactly how dangerous he really was. This wasn't just a curse killing him slowly. It was power, raw, terrible power that he'd been holding back. I have spent 5 years dying, Kalen said, his voice dropping to something cold and deadly. 5 years watching this curse spread while I felt nothing, cared about nothing, lived for nothing, and then she came. He gestured to Alira, and for the first time in 5 years I felt something, anger, fear, something that might even be hope. And you tried to take that away from me. The frost spread faster now, climbing walls, coating weapons. People in the crowd began backing away. So here's what's going to happen, Kalen continued. You're going to put down your weapons. You're going to bow to your queen, and you're going to pray I'm feeling merciful. Because if I'm not, the curse flared brighter. I'll show you exactly what a corrupted king looks like. The silence stretched. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Lady Theron drew a crossbow from beneath her cloak and fired. Everything happened at once. The bolt flew toward Alira. Kalen moved to intercept it, but Alira was faster. She threw herself forward, darkness exploding from her palms in a wave of pure consuming void. The bolt disintegrated mid-flight. The darkness kept going, swallowing torchlight, smothering fire, spreading across the courtyard like a living thing. People screamed, ran, dropped their weapons. And Alira stood at the center of it, darkness pouring from her skin, her eyes blazing violet, her power finally unleashed after 8 years of hiding and running and pretending to be weak. You want to see a curse? Her voice echoed with unnatural resonance. I'll show you a curse. The darkness reached Lady Theron. The woman's scream cut off abruptly as void wrapped around her, not hurting, not killing, just holding, immobilizing, reminding her exactly how powerless she really was. Then Alira pulled this darkness back, reining it in with effort that made her head spin. The courtyard returned to normal. Lady Theron collapsed, gasping, unharmed, but terrified. "Now bow," Elira said quietly. One by one, they did. The nobles, the mercenaries. Everyone in that courtyard knelt, their foreheads pressed to the cold ground, before the queen they'd tried to kill. Elira stood over them, shaking with exhaustion and anger and something that might have been triumph. Kaelin moved to stand beside her, and when she glanced at him, she saw pride in his eyes. "Take them to the cells," he ordered the guards who'd finally arrived. "Every last one. We'll sort out who deserves mercy tomorrow." As they hauled the prisoners away, Kaelin turned to Elira. "You all right?" "No, but I will be." She looked at her hands. They were trembling. The power had felt good. Too good. Like something she could get addicted to. "That was dangerous, what I did." "That was necessary. They needed to see you're not weak." "I'm not weak. I'm terrifying." She met his eyes. "And that scares me more than anything they could do." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her in an embrace that should have been cold but somehow wasn't. "Then we'll be terrifying together, and we'll figure out how to live with it." She leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat, slow, steady, alive. The curse hadn't won. Not yet. They'd bought themselves time. But as dawn broke over the palace and the last prisoners were dragged away, Elira couldn't shake the feeling that they'd crossed a line tonight, that she'd shown everyone exactly what she was capable of, and now there was no taking it back. The girl no one would claim had become the queen no one could deny, and the kingdom would never be the same. The kingdom would never be the same. The words echoed in Elira's mind as she stood in the council chamber 3 days later, looking at the empty chairs. Most of them, anyway. Only 5 council members remained, the ones who'd either refused to participate in the assassination plot or had been too terrified to act when the others moved. They sat now at the far end of the table, looking like children caught stealing. Kaelin paced beside the window, his movements tight and controlled. The frost that had spread during the confrontation still lingered in patches throughout the palace, a reminder of what he could do when pushed, what they both could do. "We need to rebuild the council," he said finally. 5 members isn't enough to run a kingdom." "Rebuild it with who?" Elira asked. "Every noble family that had someone on the council just tried to kill me. Their loyalties aren't exactly unclear. Then we look outside the nobility, merchants, scholars, people who actually understand how the kingdom functions instead of just trying to control it." He turned to face the remaining council members. "Any objections?" The youngest of them, a woman named Mira, who'd only been appointed 2 months ago, cleared her throat nervously. "Your Majesty, the other noble families will see that as an insult, a lowering of their status." "Good. Let them be insulted. Maybe they'll think twice before hiring assassins next time." Kaelin's voice was flat, but Elira heard the anger underneath. He was learning to feel again, and most of what he felt right now was rage. "You 5 are here because you chose loyalty over fear. That makes you more valuable than anyone who chose a title over integrity." "What about the prisoners?" asked an older man, Lord Heron. He'd been one of the first to kneel in the courtyard, his face still haunted by what he'd seen. "Lady Theron and the others. What will you do with them?" Kaelin looked at Elira. "That's your decision. They tried to kill you. You decide their fate." Every eye in the room turned to her. Elira had spent the past 3 days thinking about this, turning it over in her mind. Part of her wanted blood, wanted to show them what happened when you tried to murder a Voidborn. But another part, the part that had survived 8 years by being smarter than her enemies, knew that mercy could be more powerful than vengeance. "Public trial," she said finally. "Every charge read out loud. Every piece of evidence presented. Let the kingdom see exactly what they did and why. Then exile. Strip their titles, confiscate their lands, and send them to the border territories with nothing but the clothes on their backs." Mira's eyes widened. "That's surprisingly merciful, Your Majesty." "It's practical. If I kill them, they become martyrs. Their families will say I'm a monster who murdered them for sport. But if I exile them after a fair trial, I prove I'm not the curse they claim I am." Elira met Kaelin's gaze. "And I prove that this kingdom has laws, even for people who think they're above them." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. Or just surprise that she'd thought it through this carefully. "Make it happen," he said to the council members. Trial in 3 days. Public, in the main square. Everyone is invited to watch. And I want word spread to every territory. Anyone who thinks they can challenge the crown through violence will face the same fate. The council members bowed and left, leaving Elira and Kaelin alone. He moved to the chair beside hers, sinking into it with a weariness that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. "You're learning to play the game," he said. "I had a good teacher. You've been playing it your whole life." "Badly. I've spent 5 years making decisions with no emotional investment in the outcomes. That's not leadership. That's just going through motions." He rubbed his chest absently, and Elira saw the marks through his shirt. They'd retreated further after the confrontation, like the surge of feeling had somehow pushed the curse back. But they were still there, still spreading. "We need another session tonight. The curse is fighting back harder now. Because you're fighting back harder. The more you feel, the more it resists." She reached over and took his hand. His skin was warmer than before. Not warm, but warmer. "Progress. We're winning, Kaelin. Slowly, but we are. Or we're both being corrupted and don't realize it." He turned his hand over, studying her palm. The white scars from previous sessions had faded, but new ones were forming. Thin lines that looked like cracks in porcelain. Every time you consume the curse, it leaves marks. What happens when the marks don't fade anymore? Then we deal with it. Together. She squeezed his hand. "You keep acting like you're in this alone. You're not. I'm trying to protect you. I know, but I don't need protecting from this. I need a partner." She pulled her hand back, stood, and moved to the window. Below, the city sprawled down the hillside, smoke rising from chimneys, people going about their lives. "The kingdom is watching us, waiting to see if we'll fail. If we show weakness now, if we let the curse win or the fear win, everything falls apart." "Then what do you suggest?" She turned to face him. "We stop hiding. Stop pretending this is something we can manage quietly. The people need to see what we're dealing with. The curse, the corruption, all of it. And they need to see us fighting it, together." "You want to make the curse public?" "I want to make us public. Show them what a Voidborn can actually do. Show them that curses can be broken, that power doesn't have to mean destruction." She crossed back to him. "The trial is in 3 days. After that, we hold a ceremony, public. You show them the curse. I show them my power consuming it. We prove that we're not the monsters they think we are." Kaelin stared at her. "That's insane. If something goes wrong, if the curse transfers or you become corrupted in front of hundreds of people, then they'll see us fail trying, which is better than watching us hide and die slowly." She knelt beside his chair, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Fear is controlling this kingdom. Fear of me, fear of you, fear of the curse. The only way to break that is to face it head on. Show them there's nothing to be afraid of. There's plenty to be afraid of. But they don't need to know that." She smiled slightly. "We fake it until we make it. Isn't that what kings do?" He studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly, he reached out and touched her cheek. The gesture was becoming familiar now, this tentative reaching towards something he'd forgotten how to do. "You're either brilliant or completely reckless," he said. "Like I told you before, I'm both. And that's why I chose you." His thumb traced along her cheekbone. "Not just because you saved me, but because you're the only person I've ever met who looks at impossible situations and decides to charge straight at them. Someone has to. Might as well be the cursed girl with nothing to lose. You have plenty to lose now. Then I'll just have to make sure I don't lose it." They held each other's gaze, and something passed between them. Not love. Neither of them was ready for that, if they'd ever be ready. But something else. Partnership. Trust. The kind of bond that forms between people who've survived the same nightmares. A knock at the door broke the moment. Kara entered, carrying a tray with tea and looking significantly less terrified than she had 3 days ago. The display of power in the courtyard had affected the servants differently than the nobles. Where the nobles had seen a threat, the servants had seen protection. "Your Majesty," she said, setting down the tray. "There's someone here to see you. Says she has information about the curse." Kaelin's expression sharpened. "Who?" "An old woman, won't give her name. But she says she knew your father, says she was at the peace summit when he died." Elira and Kaelin exchanged glances. "Bring her in," Kaelin said, But search her first, thoroughly. Kara returned minutes later with an elderly woman who looked like she'd walked through several storms to get here. Her hair was white, her face lined with years, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She walked with a cane that clicked against the stone floor, each step deliberate. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing stiffly to Kaelin. Then, surprisingly, she bowed to Elira as well. "Your Majesty." "You knew my father," Kaelin said. "It wasn't a question. I was his chief advisor on magical matters. Before," she trailed off, her expression darkening. "Before the assassination. You were there. At the summit." "I was. And I know what really happened that night." She glanced at Elira. "I know about the curse, where it came from, why it won't break." Elira felt her stomach tighten. "Tell us." The old woman lowered herself into a chair, moving carefully. "Your father was poisoned, yes, but it wasn't just poison. It was cursed poison, designed to do two things: kill the victim and transfer a dark binding to the closest living blood relative. Your father knew it. In his last moments, he knew what had been done. And he tried to fight it, tried to keep the curse from spreading to you. But he couldn't. She looked at Kaelin with something like pity. "The curse that's killing you isn't just dark magic. It's a binding, a connection to whoever killed your father. They're still alive, still feeding power into it, making sure it spreads." The room went cold. Kaelin stood slowly, his hands clenched. "Who?" "I don't know their identity, but I know they're close. Someone in the palace, someone who's been watching you die slowly for 5 years and doing nothing to help." The old woman's eyes were hard. "The curse can't be broken while they're alive and feeding it. You can slow it, contain it, but you'll never be free of it, not until the source is eliminated." "How do we find them?" Elira asked. "The curse is a connection. It flows both ways. If you could trace it back to its source," she looked at Elira. "You're void-born. You've been consuming the curse, touching it directly. You should be able to feel the connection, follow it, see where it leads." "I've never tried anything like that." "Then you'd better learn fast, because the moment they realize you're getting close, they'll try to finish what they started, with both of you." The old woman stood, preparing to leave. Kaelin stopped her. "Wait, why tell us this now? Why not 5 years ago?" "Because 5 years ago, you were alone. You had no one to help you, no one to trust. You would have died trying to hunt them down." She looked between them. "But now you have her. And she has you. Together, you might actually survive this." After she left, Elira and Kaelin stood in silence. The implications settled over them like snow, cold, heavy, suffocating. "Someone in the palace has been killing you for 5 years, Elira said quietly. "Someone who's been watching, waiting. Someone we probably see every day. And they won't stop until I'm dead." Kaelin moved to his weapons cabinet, pulling out knives, checking edges. "We need to find them before they realize we know." "The trial," Elira said suddenly. 3 days from now. Everyone will be there. Every servant, every guard, every person with access to the palace. We trace the curse during the trial. In public. They won't be able to run or hide without exposing themselves. That's dangerous. Everything we do is dangerous." She joined him at the cabinet, taking one of the knives. "But it's also smart. We turn the trial into a trap. They think we're focused on the traitors. Really, we're hunting them." Kaelin tested the weight of a blade, then slid it into his belt. "You're getting good at this." "At what?" "Thinking like a queen." "I've had practice thinking like a survivor. Turns out the skills translate." They spent the next 3 days preparing. The trial was set up in the main square, a raised platform built so everyone could see. Word spread through the kingdom like wildfire. The Alpha King's justice against traitors who'd tried to kill the Void-born queen. People flooded into the city from surrounding territories, some to support the crown, others hoping to see Elira fail. Elira worked with Kaelin every night, not just consuming the curse, but learning to feel it, to understand its texture, its flow. She discovered that the old woman was right. The curse wasn't just sitting in Kaelin's body. It was being fed from somewhere else, a constant stream of dark magic flowing into him through invisible channels. "I can feel it," she said on the second night, her hands pressed to his chest. "It's like a river, coming from somewhere south and east of here." The noble quarter, Kalen said. That's where most of the palace administrators live. People with access, with knowledge, with motive. Can you narrow it down? Not without revealing what we know. We'll have to wait for the trial. The morning of the trial dawned cold and clear. Elira dressed in her darkest gown, the one that made her look like a walking shadow. She left her hair down, let her violet eyes remain uncovered. No more hiding, no more pretending to be less than she was. Kalen wore his crown and his formal armor, every inch the warrior king. But when he looked at her, his eyes were warm. Actually warm. The sessions were working, slowly, painfully, but working. He was coming back to himself. They walked to the square side by side, guards surrounding them. The crowd was massive, thousands of people packed into the space, climbing on buildings to see, filling windows and doorways. When Elira appeared, the noise died. Everyone stared. She met their gazes without flinching. The prisoners were brought out in chains, Lady Theron and the others, their fine clothes replaced with prisoners' rags. They looked smaller somehow, less threatening in daylight. But Elira remembered the crossbow, the bolt aimed at her heart, and felt no sympathy. The charges were read, the evidence presented. Witness after witness testified about the assassination attempt, about the planning, about the gold exchanged. Lady Theron tried to speak in her own defense, claiming she'd been trying to protect the kingdom from corruption. The only corruption here, Elira said, her voice carrying across the square, is the kind that makes people think murder is acceptable when they're afraid. You weren't protecting the kingdom, you were protecting your own power. You're a curse, Lady Theron screamed. You'll destroy everything. No, Kalen said quietly, but I might, if you don't shut up. The crowd laughed, actually laughed. Tension broke like a snapped wire, and suddenly the mood shifted. These weren't frightening sovereigns. They were two people dealing with impossible circumstances and somehow managing to hold it together. The verdict was delivered. Exile for all of them, just as Elira had decided. No executions, no blood, just justice, clean and simple and impossible to argue with. As the prisoners were led away, Elira turned to address the crowd. This was the moment, the trap. I know many of you still fear me, she said. Fear what I am, what I might do. So let me show you, she gestured to Kalen. He unbuttoned his shirt, revealing the curse spreading across his chest. The crowd gasped. Many hadn't known about it, hadn't realized how close their king was to death. This curse has been killing him for 5 years, Elira continued, spread by someone in the palace, someone who's been watching him die slowly and doing nothing, someone who's here right now, watching this trial. She let that sink in, watched faces in the crowd shift from curiosity to suspicion. But curses can be broken. Darkness can be consumed. Let me show you what void-born power actually does. She placed her hands on Kalen's chest. The curse reacted immediately, but she was ready for it. She pulled, consumed, felt the darkness flowing into her. And this time, instead of just consuming it, she traced it. Followed the river of magic back to its source, south and east, through the crowd, toward a cluster of people near the platform. Her eyes snapped open. She scanned faces, following the connection. There, a man in servant's clothes, middle-aged, unremarkable. He was staring at her with an expression that might have been fear, or might have been hate. You, she said. The man ran. Kalen moved faster than anyone expected, vaulting off the platform and tackling the man before he'd made it 10 feet. They went down in a tangle, the crowd scattering. Guards rushed in, hauling the man upright. Check him, Kalen ordered. They searched him, found a small vial tucked in his boot, black liquid that seemed to writhe in the glass. Cursed poison. The same kind that had killed Kalen's father. Who are you? Kalen demanded. The man spat at him. A patriot. Your father was weak. He would have given everything to the Northern Territories, let them dictate terms. He had to die. So you killed him and cursed me. I gave you strength. The curse was supposed to make you cold, calculating, ruthless, everything a real king needs to be. But then you had to go and marry that thing. He glared at Elira. And now you're bringing feelings back into it. Weakness. I won't let you destroy what I built. Kalen's expression was frozen, but his hands were shaking. You murdered my father, Cursed me. Spent 5 years watching me die. For what? Your idea of what a king should be? For the kingdom. You know nothing about this kingdom. Kalen's voice dropped to something dangerous. Elira, can you trace the curse through him? Find out if anyone else is involved? She moved forward, placed her hand on the man's forehead. He tried to jerk away, but the guards held him firm. The curse connection was strong here, pulsing with power. She followed it, deeper, searching for other threads. There. 2 more connections. Weaker, but present. He has accomplices, she said. 2 of them. 1 in the guard, 1 in the household staff. Within an hour, they'd found both. The conspiracy had been small but effective. 3 people working together to control the kingdom by controlling its king. They'd assumed the curse would make Kalen malleable, easy to manipulate. Instead, it had nearly killed him. The crowd watched it all unfold, watched as the real traitors were exposed, watched as Elira traced dark magic with her supposedly cursed power and used it to save their king instead of destroy him. And slowly, gradually, the fear in their faces changed to something else. Respect, maybe even awe. That evening, after the conspirators had been taken away and the crowd had dispersed, Elira and Kalen stood in his chambers. She was exhausted, her body aching from consuming so much dark magic in one day. But they'd done it. They'd found the source. 1 more session, she said. Tonight. We break the curse completely now that the source is cut off. Are you sure you're strong enough? I have to be. Because if we don't do this now, while we have momentum, the kingdom will start questioning again, doubting. She moved to stand in front of him. We end this tonight, together. He pulled her close, and this time the embrace was warm. Actually warm. His curse was already weakening with the source gone, his emotions flooding back faster than either of them had anticipated. I'm starting to remember what this feels like, he said quietly, caring about someone, being afraid of losing them. Is it terrible? It's terrifying. He pulled back to look at her. But I wouldn't give it up, not for anything. She smiled. Then let's finish this. Let's end the curse and see what comes next. They worked through the night. Without the source feeding it, the curse was weakening rapidly, its grip loosening. Elira consumed darkness until her arms ached, until white scars covered her skin like lace. But she kept going, kept pulling, kept consuming. And finally, as dawn broke over the palace, the last of the black marks faded from Kalen's chest. The curse was gone. He collapsed forward, gasping, and Elira caught him. They sank to the floor together, both of them shaking, both of them exhausted beyond reason. How do you feel? She managed. He looked at her, and his eyes were blazing, not with gray emptiness, with life, with feeling, with everything the curse had stolen. Warm, he said. I feel warm. Then he kissed her. It was clumsy, unpracticed, the kiss of someone who'd forgotten how. But it was real. It was human. It was everything they'd been fighting for. When they broke apart, Elira was crying. She didn't even realize it until Kalen wiped the tears away with shaking hands. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. You did it. You saved me. Again. He rested his forehead against hers. I don't know what comes next. I don't know how to be a king who can feel things, who cares about his people, who... He trailed off. Who loves someone. Love? Elira's breath caught. I think so. I'm not sure. I'm still learning what that feels like. But whatever this is... He took her hand, pressed it over his heart. It was beating strong and steady. No cold spreading from it, no curse consuming it. It's yours, if you want it. She did want it. More than she'd realized. This broken king who'd chosen her when no one else would. This man who'd protected her, fought for her, believed in her when believing seemed impossible. Yes, she said, I want it. They sat on the floor as dawnlight filled the room, holding each other, breathing together. The curse was broken. The conspirators were caught. The kingdom had seen them triumph. For the first time in 8 years, Elira felt safe. For the first time in 5 years, Kalen felt alive. And for the first time in both their lives, they felt like they might actually have a future. And for the first time in both their lives, they felt like they might actually have a future. The feeling lasted approximately 6 hours. Alira woke to shouting in the corridors. She bolted upright from where she'd fallen asleep on Kalen's floor, her body protesting every movement. Beside her, Kalen was already on his feet, pulling on his shirt, reaching for his sword. "What now?" she muttered, forcing herself to stand. Her arms were covered in white scars, her head pounding from exhaustion. The door burst open. One of the remaining council members, Lord Heron, stood there, his face pale and panicked. "Your Majesty, the Northern Territories, they're mobilizing." Kalen's expression went hard. "Mobilizing what?" "Their armies, all of them. They're claiming the curse breaking is a sign of weakness, that you've been compromised by void-born magic and are no longer fit to rule. They're demanding you abdicate and name a successor from one of their noble families." Heron's hand shook as he held out a sealed letter. "This arrived an hour ago. It's a formal declaration of intent to invade if you refuse." Alira felt something cold settle in her stomach. They'd broken the curse, exposed the conspirators, survived assassination attempts and rebellions, and now, just when they thought they'd won, the entire northern half of the kingdom was preparing for war. "How long do we have?" Kalen asked, his voice perfectly calm. 3 days. They're giving you 3 days to respond before they cross the border." 3 days to roll over and die, you mean? Kalen tossed the letter aside without reading it. "Assemble the remaining council. Send word to the Southern Territories. Tell them we need reinforcements. And find out exactly how many soldiers the North can field. Your Majesty, our forces are spread thin after the conspirators' arrests. Many of our best commanders were complicit in the plot. If the North comes with everything they have, then we'll meet them with everything we have." Kalen's eyes blazed. "I didn't survive 5 years of dying just to hand my kingdom over to a bunch of territorial lords who think they can bully me into submission." Lord Heron bowed and hurried away. Kalen turned to Alira, and she saw the exhaustion beneath his anger. He'd just gotten his emotions back. Now he had to use them to fight a war. "This is my fault," she said quietly. "They're using me as an excuse. If you hadn't married me, they would have found another excuse. The North has been looking for a reason to break away for years. I've been too weak to stop them, too consumed by the curse to care." He crossed to her, took her hands. "But I'm not weak anymore, and I'm not giving up what we built just because they're afraid of it. What we built is fragile, 3 days old. It won't survive a war." "Then we make sure there isn't a war." His grip tightened. "The North wants proof I'm not compromised? We'll give them proof. We'll go there ourselves, face their leaders directly, show them exactly what a king and queen can do when they stop playing by old rules." Alira stared at him. "You want to walk into hostile territory while they're preparing to invade? I want to remind them why they knelt to my father in the first place, and why they'll kneel to me." He pulled her closer. "You said we stop hiding, stop pretending. This is us not hiding. We show them we're not afraid. We should be afraid. They could kill us. They could. But they won't, because that would give the South an excuse to crush them completely, and they know it." He touched her face. "Trust me, I've been negotiating with these people my whole life. They respect strength. We show weakness, they attack. We show strength, they back down. And if you're wrong, then we die together, which is still better than living apart." She wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong, but she looked at his eyes, alive now, burning with determination instead of empty coldness, and realized he was right. Hiding wouldn't save them. Only facing this head-on would. "Fine," she said. "We go north. We face them. But we do it smart. No grand gestures that get us killed. We negotiate, we show strength, and we get out alive. Agreed?" "Agreed." They left at dawn the next morning with a small escort, 20 guards, 2 council members, and Kara, who'd refused to stay behind. The journey north took a full day on horseback, through territories that grew progressively colder and rockier. By the time they reached the northern capital of Frostholm, Alira's hands were numb and her face hurt from the wind. The city was built into a mountainside, all stone and ice, looking like something carved by nature instead of human hands. Guards lined the walls, watching their approach with hostile eyes. When they reached the gates, a commander stepped forward. "The Northern Lords are expecting you," he said. His tone suggested they'd been expecting Kalen to run instead. Follow me. They were led through winding streets to a great hall built of black stone and iron. Inside, seated around a massive table, were the 12 northern lords. All men, all old, all looking at Kaelin and Elira like they were problems to be solved. At the head of the table sat Lord Commander Varric, the unofficial leader of the North. He was ancient, his face weathered by decades of northern winters, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. "Your Majesty," he said. No warmth in the greeting. "We're surprised you came. We expected a refusal by letter." "I don't refuse by letter," Kaelin said. "I refuse to your face." The room went silent. Several lords looked shocked. One actually laughed. Varric's expression didn't change. "Then you're refusing our terms?" "Your terms are surrender. Of course I'm refusing them." Kaelin moved to stand at the opposite end of the table. Elira followed, positioning herself at his right hand. "You claim I'm compromised by void-born magic. You claim I'm unfit to rule. Let's address that directly. Ask me anything you want. Test me however you need. Prove I'm compromised." "The curse," one lord started, "is broken. Completely. The source has been eliminated, the conspiracy exposed. I'm free of it." Kaelin unbuttoned his shirt, revealing unmarked skin. No black lines, no spreading darkness. Just scars from where it had been. "The Voidborn Queen broke what should have killed me. She saved my life and our kingdom. That's not compromise. That's salvation." "She's still Voidborn," another lord said. "Her power is dangerous, unstable." "My power," Elira said, her voice carrying across the hall, "is the reason your king is alive. The reason the conspiracy was exposed. The reason this kingdom still has a ruler instead of descending into chaos." She met each lord's gaze in turn. "You're afraid of what I am. I understand that. People have been afraid of Voidborn for centuries, but fear based on ignorance is just cowardice dressed up as wisdom." "How dare you?" someone sputtered. "How dare I what? Tell the truth? Point out that you're using me as an excuse to grab power?" She moved forward, and several lords leaned back. "You don't care about the curse. You don't care about compromise. You care that a woman you can't control is sitting beside the throne. You care that your old, comfortable system is changing. Well, it is changing. The question is whether you're smart enough to change with it or stubborn enough to destroy yourselves trying to stop it." Varric studied her with those sharp eyes. Bold words for someone in hostile territory. Bold seems appropriate for someone who rode here knowing you were preparing to invade. Elira placed her hands flat on the table. "You want proof I'm not a threat? Here it is. I could have stayed in the capital and waited for you to attack. Instead, I came here, put myself in your hands. If I wanted to destroy you, I'd have done it already. But I don't want destruction. I want to build something better than the fear-based kingdom we've all been living in." "Pretty speech," Varric said, "but speeches don't change facts. You're voidborn. Your power consumes darkness. What happens when there's no darkness left to consume? What do you consume then?" The question hung in the air. Elira felt every eye on her waiting for her answer. This was the real test, the real fear underneath all the political posturing. "Nothing," she said quietly. "Voidborn power requires darkness to function. Without it, we're just people. I've spent 8 years learning to control it, to use it only when necessary. I'm not a monster waiting to snap. I'm a woman who survived impossible odds and learned to turn the thing people feared most about me into something useful." She looked at Kaelin. "He understands that. Why can't you?" "Because he's compromised," a younger lord said. "The curse affected his judgment. He married you out of desperation, not strategy." "I married her because she was the only person strong enough to help me," Kaelin corrected, "and smart enough to survive my court, and brave enough to stand beside me when everyone else wanted her dead." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "But if you want to call that compromise, fine. Let's test it. Right here, right now. Pick your best warrior. I'll fight him. If I win, you acknowledge I'm fit to rule and drop this rebellion. If I lose, you can have your succession." The room erupted. Lords shouting over each other, some calling it madness, others calling it exactly what they needed. Varric raised a hand, and silence fell. "You would stake your crown on a duel?" "I would stake it on proving I'm not the weak, emotionless shell you think I am. The curse is gone. I feel everything now, including the desire to knock some sense into people who think they can threaten my kingdom. Kaelin's eyes blazed. So yes, a duel. Your champion against me. If you're so certain I'm compromised, prove it. Varric looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Very well. Our champion is Thorin Blackforge. He's undefeated in 23 duels. If you survive 10 minutes against him without yielding, we'll consider your point made. I'll do better than survive. I'll win. They moved to a courtyard behind the hall, where a fighting circle had been marked in the snow. Word spread quickly, the Alpha King challenging the Northern champion. People flooded in to watch, packing the surrounding buildings, climbing walls for a better view. Thorin Blackforge turned out to be a mountain of a man, easily 7 feet tall and built like a stone wall. He carried a warhammer that looked like it weighed more than a lira. When he stepped into the circle, the ground seemed to shake. Kaelin stood across from him, looking small by comparison. He'd stripped down to just his shirt and pants, sword in hand. The wind whipped around them, carrying snow and ice. This is insane, Illyra said from the edge of the circle. He's twice your size. Size doesn't matter if you're fast. Kaelin tested the weight of his sword. And I'm very fast. If he hits you, he won't. Trust me. A horn sounded. The duel began. Thorin moved faster than something his size should be able to, closing the distance in 3 steps. His hammer came down like a falling mountain. Kaelin rolled aside, the weapon missing him by inches and cratering the ground where he'd stood. The next 5 minutes were brutal. Thorin was relentless, his hammer swinging in arcs that would have killed Kaelin instantly if they'd connected. But Kaelin moved like water, fluid, unpredictable, always just out of reach. He didn't try to match strength with strength. He used speed, precision, finding gaps in Thorin's defense and landing cuts that bled but didn't stop the giant. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This wasn't supposed to be a real fight. This was supposed to be a quick demonstration of why Kaelin shouldn't rule. Instead, they were watching their undefeated champion struggle against a king who'd been dying for 5 years. At the 8-minute mark, Thorin made a mistake. He overextended on his swing, left his side exposed. Kaelin didn't hesitate. He drove forward, his blade sliding between armor plates, and Thorin went down. Not dead, not even seriously injured, but down, defeated. The silence stretched. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the entire courtyard erupted in cheers, not because they loved Kaelin, but because they'd just witnessed something impossible. Kaelin extended a hand to Thorin. The giant stared at it for a moment, then took it, letting Kaelin help him up. You fight well for a compromised king, Thorin rumbled. I fight well for a king who has something worth fighting for. Kaelin turned to face Varric. Do I have your acknowledgement? The old lord studied him. Then, slowly, he stood. You have it. And more than that, you have my respect. He glanced at Illyra. Both of you. You came here knowing we could kill you. You put everything on the line to prove a point. That's not the action of compromised rulers. That's the action of leaders. Does that mean you're dropping the rebellion? Illyra asked. It means we're reconsidering. We still have concerns about void-born power, about the changes you're making, but Varric gestured at Kaelin. A king who can defeat Thorin Blackforge after 5 years of dying from a curse is not a king we can dismiss. Give us time to discuss among ourselves. We'll send our decision to the capital within a week. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. They stayed in Frostholm that night, accepting Varric's grudging hospitality. Illyra found Kaelin on a balcony overlooking the mountains, his shoulder bandaged where Thorin had landed one solid hit. That was reckless, she said, joining him at the railing. That was necessary. They needed to see I'm not the empty king I used to be. He looked at her. Thank you for backing me up in there. I meant every word. They needed to hear it. She leaned against him. Do you think they'll actually stand down? Some of them, maybe most. There will always be holdouts, people who can't accept change. But we shifted the momentum. That's what matters. You shifted it. You're the one who fought. I fought because you gave me something worth fighting for. He pulled her closer. Before you, I was just going through motions. Now I actually care about the outcome. That makes all the difference. They stood together in the cold northern night, watching stars appear between clouds. Somewhere below, the northern lords were debating. Somewhere to the south, their kingdom waited to see if war would come. But up here, in this moment, they had peace. "What happens when we get back?" Illyra asked. "We rebuild, properly this time. New council members who understand what we're trying to do. New laws that protect people instead of controlling them. New alliances with territories that see the value in change." He turned to face her. "And we do it together. Not as king and tool, not as desperate allies, as partners. Is that a proposal? We're already married, but if you want a better proposal than the one you got at a claiming auction, I can arrange that." He smiled, actually smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I love you, Illyra Voss. I don't know when it happened, don't know exactly how, but I do. And I want to spend whatever time we have building something worth leaving behind." She kissed him, there on the balcony with snow falling around them. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about their situation was perfect. But it was real, and it was theirs, and that was enough. They returned to the capital 3 days later to find word had already spread. The Alpha King had defeated the Northern Champion, the Voidborn Queen had faced down hostile lords and survived. The stories were growing with each retelling, becoming legend. The Northern Territories sent their decision a week later. They would stand down. Not surrender, not pledge eternal loyalty, but stand down. Accept Kaelin's rule. Accept Illyra as queen. It was a start. Over the following months, the kingdom transformed. The new council included merchants, scholars, even a few former servants who'd proven themselves during the conspiracy. Laws changed. Voidborn were no longer automatically exiled or killed. Claiming auctions were outlawed. Power shifted from old noble families to people who'd earned it through skill and loyalty. Not everyone was happy. Some nobles left, taking their gold and influence to other kingdoms. Some territories grumbled about the changes, but most adapted. Most learned that the new system worked better than the old one, and at the center of it all stood Kaelin and Illyra. Not perfect rulers. They made mistakes, faced setbacks, dealt with problems that seemed insurmountable. But they faced them together, and slowly, grudgingly, the kingdom learned to trust them. A year after the curse broke, Illyra stood in the council chamber looking at a report from the Northern Territories. Their harvest had been good. Trade was improving. The local lord had written a personal note at the bottom. "Your investment in our infrastructure is paying dividends. The people are eating. Thank you." "We're actually doing it," she said, handing the report to Kaelin. "Building something that works." "We've barely started. There's still the Eastern Territories to deal with, the Southern Rebellion simmering, the economic reforms that half the merchants hate. But we're doing it, together." She moved to stand beside him at the window, their usual spot now. The city below looked different than it had a year ago. Cleaner, busier, more alive. Kaelin wrapped his arm around her waist. The gesture was natural now, easy. He'd learned to be affectionate, to show emotion, to be human again. Some days were harder than others. The curse had left scars that went deeper than skin. But he was trying, and that was enough. "I was thinking," he said carefully, "about the future. Our future." That sounds ominous. It's not. I want to make sure you're happy, that this is what you want. Because if it's not, if you want something different. She turned to face him. "Kaelin, I'm happy. I'm building a kingdom with a man I love. I'm using my power to help people instead of hide from them. I'm exactly where I want to be. Even though you didn't choose it originally, I choose it now, every day. That's what matters." She touched his face. "You saved me from that auction. Let me stay saved. Let me build this life with you." He kissed her softly. "I love you. I know I say it too much now. You don't say it enough." "I love you," he repeated. "And I promise to spend every day proving you made the right choice. You already have." They stood together as afternoon faded to evening, watching their city prepare for night. Guards changed shifts, merchants closed shops, families gathered for meals. Ordinary life made possible because two cursed people had refused to let fear win. Kara found them there an hour later. She was the Queen's primary advisor now, having proved herself invaluable during the transition. "Your Majesties, the delegation from the Eastern Territories has arrived. They're requesting an audience." "Already?" Kaelin sighed. We weren't expecting them until tomorrow. They're eager. Apparently word of the northern settlement reached them. Kara smiled slightly. They want to negotiate before someone else gets better terms. Good. That means we have leverage. Kaelin looked at Elira. Ready for another round? Always. They followed Kara toward the reception hall, falling into step beside each other. Partnership in motion. Halfway there, Elira caught Kaelin's hand, squeezed it once. He squeezed back. Whatever came next, diplomatic negotiations, territorial disputes, the endless work of rebuilding a kingdom, they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else. Together, refusing to be broken by circumstances that would have destroyed them separately. The girl no one would claim had become a queen, no one could deny. The king who couldn't love had learned to feel again. And in a kingdom once ruled by fear and tradition, they'd proved that love and courage could rewrite everything. Not perfectly, not easily, but completely. The delegation waited in the reception hall, 5 Eastern lords with cautious expressions and careful words. They'd heard the stories, seen the changes, come prepared to negotiate with rulers who'd survived the impossible. As Elira and Kaelin entered, the lords stood and bowed. Real bows, not the grudging half gestures of before. Respect earned through action, not demanded through force. Your Majesties, the lead lord said, we come seeking alliance. The old ways are dying. We wish to be part of what comes next. Kaelin glanced at Elira. She nodded once. Then let's talk, Kaelin said, gesturing to the table. Let's build something better than what came before. They sat, they talked, they negotiated terms that would have been impossible a year ago. And through it all, Elira kept one hand linked with Kaelin's beneath the table, a reminder that they'd survived worse than difficult negotiations. Hours later, as the Eastern lords departed with preliminary agreements, Elira and Kaelin finally returned to their chambers, both exhausted, both satisfied. I think that went well, Elira said, collapsing into a chair. Better than expected. They're actually willing to implement the reforms. Kaelin joined her, pulling her into his lap. We're winning, Elira. Slowly. But we're winning. We are, she agreed. Then she kissed him, long and deep, pouring everything she felt into it. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. Thank you for choosing me at that auction, for seeing something worth saving when everyone else saw a curse. Thank you for saving me back, for not giving up when it would have been easier to let me die. He held her close. For choosing to stay, even after you saw how broken I was. You weren't broken, just lost. There's a difference. Then thank you for finding me. They sat together as night deepened, 2 people who'd survived everything meant to destroy them. Outside, their kingdom settled into darkness, safe and stable for the first time in years. Inside, they held each other and planned for a future they'd earned through blood and determination and refusing to surrender to fear. The curse was broken, the conspirators defeated, the kingdom rebuilding. And at the heart of it all, a king and queen who'd learned that love wasn't weakness, it was the strongest weapon they had. The girl no one would claim had claimed herself, had claimed a crown, had claimed a future no one thought possible. The king who couldn't feel had learned that feeling was what made him truly powerful. And together, they'd proved that in a world ruled by fear and tradition, 2 cursed people could rewrite destiny itself. Not through perfect decisions or flawless execution, but through partnership, courage, and the simple refusal to give up when giving up would have been easier. They'd survived, they'd adapted, they'd won, and now they had the rest of their lives to build something worth fighting for. Together. Always together. The end was really just the beginning.